Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show. As first responders, we risk our lives every day. Our financial security is under attack. Our pensions are in a state of emergency. A single on-duty incident can alter or erase our earning potential instantly and forever. We are the heroes of society. We are self-reliant and we need to take care of our own financial future. The Heroic Investing Show is our toolkit of business and investing tactics on our mission to financial freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 132 of the Heroic Investing Show. This show is a podcast for first responders, active duty members of the military, retired EMTs, firefighters, police officers, veterans of the military, entrepreneurs, and really anyone with a W-2 job that is looking to increase passive income, freedom of their time, to be with family, to work on that business, grow that business that inspires them. And today's episode is an awesome one. See, we teach America's heroes how to build passive income, build their startup business, and safely grow wealth through real estate and other alternative investments. And that's what our guest, Anton Ivanov, is going to talk about today. He is a veteran from the Navy, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but he also started a very, very successful online software business in the real estate world. And he's going to talk about how he did that, how he bought real estate and started a company and became extremely successful in just a few short years. I think it's these kinds of inspiring stories that are perfect for this audience, but also are what we need continuously, at least once a week, reminders that this stuff is not that hard and it's not that crazy of an idea. You can stop making the drudgery drive to work every week, every Monday morning. Listen, I've been in your shoes and I left that track. I drove for 5 years, 3 hours each way on the weekends to a job that was good. I was very proud to do my military service at the Pentagon on the Joint Staff and my time at the Naval Academy. Absolutely loved that. I absolutely hated the commute. And the commute was personal choice. I mean, it was something that was needed for our family, for my bride to be able to go after her, pursue her career, for our kids to be able to be around their friends and to pursue the education and the sports that they wanted to pursue where we live here in New Jersey on the shore. So, I mean, yes, it was personal. We could have made a different choice if circumstances had led to that. But bottom line is that we all have these things we do when we're in a W-2 job that is not a perfect fit. And you have the ability to turn it into a perfect fit. And that's what we try to talk about on this show. And I think you will be amazed by Anton and his story. And I think it will be tremendously inspiring for you. So a little bit about Anton before we launch into our discussion. He's a buy and hold investor, lives in the San Diego area with his wife. He was actually born in Russia and moved to the U.S. when he was 15 years old. He served 6 years active duty in the U.S. Navy. Most of that was served in Japan. He was on amphibious ships. And then about the time he was nearing the end of his tour in the Navy, he said that he really became interested in real estate and the idea of passive investment because his true passion in life was to build a software business. He wanted to teach himself programming, and he wanted to start building software programs. And he has created an extremely successful business doing that. But along the way, he had to build some passive income. And so in 5 or so years, he and his wife have just simply by living extremely frugal lifestyles while still working full-time, they were able to grow a rental portfolio of 35 units and about $11,000 in monthly passive cash flow. That, folks, is tremendous, right? That is, in 5 years, he's created something that would take 35 years in the military to create as a pension. You know, he says, we didn't do any creative financing strategies. They simply just lived, as I said, they were focused and had high savings rates, lived pretty frugally, and were able to just save money for each subsequent purchase. And I also mentioned he has a company. He's the founder of an extremely successful software company called DealCheck. And he has a great, pardon the pun, but a deal for us that you should check out. Okay, I did that pun on purpose, and it wasn't a good one. His company is a popular property analysis tools software in the real estate markets, and they have over 50,000 active users. It's used by real estate investors, by agents, all over the world. And it's quickly becoming the most popular way to, in a short order, analyze rental properties, flips, commercial properties, and make smarter investment decisions. And so for our audience, he's given a code to try DealCheck at 25% off the normal subscription price for the pro version. Like many applications, there is a free version, but if you do like what you see on the free version, then you can sign up for DealCheck Pro with 25% off of that subscription. And the code will be in the show notes, but it is HERO25OFF, HERO25OFF. So please do go check it out. Check out the free version. I think it's pretty fantastic. And if you like what you see, then when you sign up for the Pro, which is not very expensive, then you remember to put in that HERO25OFF code. So I think, again, I could not have picked a better or been referred by my great friend Craig, a better person than Anton to talk to this audience about how to build up the passive income, how to launch from your W-2 job and start a company. So, I mean, he's still in his W-2 job, actually, but he's certainly he's there because he loves to be there, not because anyone says he has to, nor because his finances force him to do so. He's there because he likes what he's doing in programming there and wants to continue to perfect his company. But he's having a great time with DealCheck, and he's having a great time with his real estate, and that will certainly come out as you listen to the two of us here in this interview. So please join me and enjoy this discussion with an amazing, amazing, perfect fit guest for our show, Anton Ivanov. So everyone, thanks so much for joining me. And as I said in the introduction, we have a special guest with us today. He hails originally from Moscow, Russia. And believe it or not, he's like one of us. He's a heroic investing qualifier. He served in the military. He's also big into real estate investing. And I think you're going to really learn a ton from Anton. So first of all, Anton, thank you so much for spending time with us and welcome.
Thanks, Gary. It's great to be here, and it's an honor to get on your show.
Awesome. So Anton, as I mentioned, was a fire control technician in the U.S. Navy, spent a lot of time in a place that I spent my entire deployment, and actually 2 or 3 of them, Japan. So were you stationed physically in Japan on a ship that came out of Yokosuka?
Actually, it was Sasebo, so a little kind of down south. Yeah, I was on the LHD down there, first the Essex, and then it hull swapped with Bonhomme Richard. So I actually got an original 3-year tour down there to Sasebo, Japan, and then I extended for 2 more years and basically ended up doing most of my 6-year contract out there.
What was the years there? 09 to
so
13?
This was, I joined in 07, so this was 08 to 2013.
Wow, that's amazing. So that covers the period when my ship was in Sasebo for about 2 weeks and my entire deployment over there on Tucson. So I don't know if you guys ever went sub hunting, but probably not.
Yeah, we kind of did. We did more marine support, kind of a lot of exercises, but you know, it sounds like we might have crossed paths there at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. Stuff that we won't talk about on this radio. Well, that's awesome. And Sasebo is such a beautiful place. I absolutely love that. Some historic memories of taking my crew up to Hiroshima and Nagasaki museums. Really humbles you as an American to think about the power of war. And personally, for me, being a guy in command of something that could unleash that kind of stuff, making my crew aware that this is not just a paycheck, you know, and some of them actually, after my change of command, came up to me or afterwards, you know, took a moment to say, you know, they really remember that discussion we had, that trip we had, as something that they appreciated and changed their perspective on their mission and, you know, their commitment and what they did. So I appreciate you bringing back the memories of Japan and Sasebo and those amazing museums. I love the people in Japan. I'm sure you probably had a pretty similar experience.
Yeah, they were probably some of the nicest, kind of most respectful people or as a nation I've ever met. Yeah, great time, had wonderful experiences. I kind of did some traveling around the country. up north to Tokyo area a few times, and yeah, loved it. Me and my wife sometimes joke that if we didn't live here, we'd buy a little house somewhere in Japan countryside and move back there.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate what happened in World War II and them getting caught up with some egotistical leadership, but it happened across the world. It was a crazy period of time. I still meet people, World War II veterans or direct descendants of them, that are very bitter against the Japanese people. And it's interesting that in my time in Hawaii, I would be at the Arizona Memorial, and over here, Americans, my age or younger, that still could not believe that Japanese would come visit that site, almost as like they had the opinion that the Japanese were gloating. But I'll tell you what, when I went to Nagasaki and Hiroshima, none of the Japanese responded to that. In fact, they came up to me and thanked my crew for taking the time to come and understand what happened. So it was really a totally different perspective. I gained a tremendous amount of respect. I already had a tremendous amount, but gained a lot more when I went through that experience. So you came back in 2013. You had
I did.
You had a rental property already, or you had a property, and you kind of started learning out of default, really, about the idea of real estate.
Yeah, so what happened as I was serving in the Navy right around kind of 08, 09, unfortunately my parents passed away. And they had a condo back here in San Diego that they kind of lived in. And I basically ended up inheriting that and becoming what you can call an accidental landlord.
Yeah.
Here I am in Japan. I didn't know anything really about real estate. It was just kind of getting started with my finances and investing and kind of the TSP and those sort of things. And suddenly I have this property, and I almost sold it, actually. At the time, I was just thinking that was the easiest solution, but talked to a few folks, and they convinced me that, hey, it might not be such a bad idea, so why don't you keep it? So I actually did keep it and started renting it out remotely. Now, being in San Diego with high prices here and not so high rent, the cash flow on it wasn't the great. But it was cash flowing a little bit, and it gave me kind of firsthand experience with being a landlord, working with the property manager, and especially doing it, remotely, because the property was in San Diego and I was in Japan. So gave me a lot of experience from the landlord side. Unfortunately, I kind of skipped the whole property acquisition part of it. So when I got back in 2013 and got out of the Navy and kind of started transitioning to a more civilian life here in San Diego, I started looking at real estate again. Obviously was very interested in it as an alternative investment to stocks and bonds. And I was looking for first a single family home, but I decided then, why don't we buy a multifamily, like a duplex or triplex, and live in one of the units and rent out the other. So kind of the house hacking method, as many would call it. And even though I kind of had that one property already, I feel like this was really my first deal that I had to find and get financing for and actually close on the property and do some rehab work. So that happened right around, I think, end of 2013 and beginning 2014, when me and my wife finally found this duplex in San Diego. It took us quite a while because there weren't that many properties, and most of them were too kind of expensive and wouldn't work out investment-wise. But eventually we did and moved out into one of the units and did some rehab work, learned a ton about just buying real estate, finding properties, kind of working with contractors, closing. And we did use a VA loan on that property, which I think is obviously a fantastic program for active duty and retired veterans. So we were able to buy it with, I think it was about 6% we put down. So I wanted to have a little bit of equity, but obviously a lot less than a conventional 20% mortgage would have cost us. And here in San Diego, quite frankly, we wouldn't even be able to buy this property without a VA loan because, we're looking at 4 or 5, 600,000 for a property like that, and we just did not have the down payment cash saved up at the time.
Sure. You're looking at, leaving the military in 2013. Some of that had to do with the fact that you had a property. What were some of the other thoughts about transitioning out?
So I love the military. I have nothing bad to say. I think it really helped me kind of grow up and grow as a person. Learned a lot about myself and kind of what I wanted to do and finances and that sort of thing. As far as career goes, I was a fire controlman, but I really look myself as kind of working on electronics. So it was comparable to like somebody who's maybe an electrician or an electronics technician on the civilian world. And I liked that work, but right there around towards the end of my service, I really found a passion for software development and kind of, building software applications, working on some websites. As part of, I was working on an online bachelor's degree during my time in the Navy, and I had a few classes on software development and really liked that part. And I kind of made a decision that that's what I want to do full time. I want to be an engineer and specifically with software. And I didn't really see, myself kind of possibility of doing that work as I wanted to in the Navy. So I decided to, transition out and try that. So I think for me, the Navy really was a good time for me. It was an important growing milestone, and it just kind of naturally progressed as my career goals changed, and I was looking to do something different.
Very cool. Did you end up going to college and pursuing engineering? I know you worked as an electronics technician for a while you were building real estate.
Sure. So I actually, while I was in the Navy out there in Japan, I finished a bachelor's degree online in information technology. So it wasn't quite engineering, but I had a few classes on software development and kind of other,
cool,
somewhat related topics. So I had a degree. And at first, when my first job after the Navy was actually working as a electronics technician for a tech company here in San Diego. And while I was there, I actually mostly self-taught myself actual software development. So I built a couple mobile apps for that company and did a few projects on the side, which kind of gave me, took a few kind of boot camps and online courses. So I like to think that I'm more or less self-taught as far as software development goes, and that kind of grew into a full software development road down the line that I was able to get by basically having a few of these side projects and some experience, and I was able to get a junior software developer role.
Do you currently still have a traditional W-2 job?
I do, yes.
You do?
So
okay.
I still work full-time. I keep very productive. So, real estate for me, I never kind of envisioned it being a full-time endeavor. It was more of a investment vehicle and a way to kind of generate passive income and grow my portfolio, grow my wealth. So all through this time, I obviously continued, investing in real estate and buying more properties. But ever since getting out of the Navy, I always had a full-time job. And I think that actually played a very important role in helping my wife and I grow our portfolio rather quickly. Because we kept real estate on the side and we were able to reinvest all of the cash flow from our properties. And then, we live a pretty frugal lifestyle and we try to save as much money as possible. So I kind of focused on growing my W-2, my, regular full-time job income, and save as much of that money, and combined with the cash flow from our properties that basically fueled our real estate growth.
Yeah, so that's some great advice right there. So many people read, the great works of like Robert Kiyosaki and, Rich Dad Poor Dad and Reaching Financial Freedom Day and things like that, and, escaping the rat race. And I think too many people make that mistake of going too quickly. They're able to get passive to cover their expenses and they leap, and then they find themselves a bit stuck, not having the ability to accelerate things. And they shift into much slower growth because they're using all of the profits to live on. Have you experienced that?
I totally agree. I've talked to a few folks and read on sites like Bigger Pockets about, these so-called full-time investors. And I think that can work if you have enough scale, like you said. But, if you're just starting out, you got to consider that, having just a few properties is probably going to be just, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 of cash flow a month. And that's not only kind of very little to live on, but if you start using up all of that income for kind of your lifestyle, food, shelter, and so forth, you can't use it to buy more properties. So I would completely agree with you that for new investors, the majority of the growth of their portfolio will actually come from their full-time job and their personal savings, not from their properties. And it will take several years and probably 10 plus units or something like that, to see actual meaningful passive income come from your rental properties, and then slowly that will kind of take over and become a snowball that's just growing on itself. But I totally agree with you, and I've had similar advice given to me, and I'm very glad that I kind of stayed as having my full-time career and focusing on growing my salary, even though you can say that, hey, I'm still kind of doing a 9 to 5, but in retrospect, that provided so much additional funds that I used to buy these properties. And me and my wife will hopefully be able to retire much earlier than the standard retirement age. And I don't think that would have been possible if we just said, let's quit our jobs and focus on real estate.
Yeah, and so many people are looking for passive income from real estate as the solution to a different problem, right? The problem that they're solving is not that they love real estate and can't have enough time with it. The problem they're solving is, I hate my job. So instead of fixing that problem by getting a different job or calling or working for themselves, they try to solve the problem by just not having to go to that crazy place they hate. My suggestion is work on yourself, find something that you love and inspires you more, and then it's not work anymore. And so I talk to everyone about, very similar to what the two of you, or how you would, I think, describe it, how you just did. I just talk about rental properties simply as my wealth bucket. It's a place where I feel like I can safely store and grow my money, get some tax advantages, but it's not the thing that gets me passionate. Going and staring at my properties and taking phone calls from renters, or property managers, does not get me excited. And for some people it does, and that would be a good reason to be a full-time investor, I guess. Doing it so you don't have to go to work, that's a bad solution, in my opinion. Any thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. Obviously there's different ways to get into real estate, and I agree with you, Gary, that, rental properties, again, unless you have, 20, 30, 50 plus units where managing them could be a full-time kind of endeavor. But if you just have a few, I don't think rental properties is really a full-time task, and frankly, it's just not going to generate you enough income. You would be much better off kind of having a full-time job and doing that, and then having your properties on the side to continue growing your portfolio. Now, I've met some people who, really like real estate, and they do other things besides rental properties, like flipping or maybe wholesaling, or, they're a realtor. So basically, kind of those activities, they can bring in kind of more of a steady income, or at least larger income than rental property. So, I've met quite a few people who, for example, flip, 20, 30 homes a year, and that's kind of their income. That's their job. That's what they do full time. And then they invest that money into rental properties, or, maybe they keep 1 out of 5 that they flip. Or maybe they do wholesaling full time, or maybe they're a realtor, and that's kind of their job. So, there are ways to kind of be all in on real estate, I guess, but I definitely think that rental properties by themselves is just not enough. You're going to have to do something full time. And, if you really like real estate, I guess more power to you, but I really enjoy software development, obviously, and I'm pretty good at it, and was able to succeed in that field, and the income from that really helped me grow my portfolio.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And so I think the key takeaway is, for military members and for first responders and police officers that are just wearing themselves out with round-the-clock work and lots of overtime, don't solve the problem of the job is not a great fit right now, or I'm getting tired, with just jumping into real estate, unless real estate is, and I don't mean jumping in, I shouldn't say it that way, going full-time into it, or quitting your job as soon as there's barely enough cash flow to get by on. Solve the problem by taking a look at yourself, what inspires you, and try to slowly transition your course. Kiyosaki, again, wrote a great book on before you quit your day job, or before you quit your job, or something like that. I think it's before you quit your job. And it talks about this, that he always promotes things like network marketing and things like that, but having a side job, or relaunching yourself like you did, self-taught, for software development, so that you could go into transition into something that you're more inspired by. So I think that is a huge lesson. Don't look to passive from real estate to be a primary job if it's not, don't go over there for the money if it's not what inspires you, because you're not going to be happy there either, I think is really a big takeaway. But you were successful with software development. In fact, you created your own app, your own kind of business, if you will, called DealCheck. Talk to us about that, because I think our listeners would be really interested.
Sure. So actually, I mentioned before that when I was learning software development. I did a few side projects, weekend projects, basically for me to both learn and maybe something would come out of it at the time is what I thought. And one of those was DealCheck that started as a kind of a weekend project. And basically I was analyzing a lot of rental properties at the time, especially kind of while driving around on my phone. And I was looking for an app where I could quickly, punch in the numbers and get the cash flow, the, cash on cash return cap rate, all of those numbers quickly for a property, and then I could save it for later and, compare them or look on my computer. And I looked around, and frankly, there wasn't anything there that I really liked. So I ended up making DealCheck, which is essentially a property analysis software that you can use to analyze rental properties, rehab projects, flips, commercial buildings. It works online, so you can use it at DealCheck.io through your browser on any computer, or you can download the DealCheck mobile app for your Android or iOS phone or tablet. And again, it's kind of an on-the-go solution if you need to quickly run some numbers, get your pro forma cash flow, profit from a flip. I think it's a great tool, and it, grew from a small kind of side project to almost being my full-time job at this point. I'm still not quite transitioned to it 100%, but it's more of a full-fledged startup with 5 employees that we have and a really growing user base of agents and investors and other professionals in the real estate industry. So it's been quite a success that I honestly did not anticipate when I first started it, but I'm very happy to say that is doing well. But more so, it's very rewarding, getting emails and messages from investors who have found great deals because of this tool and how it's really helping them scale their business, be that a rental, kind of a buy and hold investor, a wholesaler who needs to, send professional reports to their buyers list, or even real estate agents who work with investors. So I think that's been really the success here for me, and the most rewarding part is hearing the stories of other investors. So I've just kind of, at the end, so DealCheck is free to use, and again, you're welcome to try it out. Just search for DealCheck on iOS or Android, or go to DealCheck.io to try our online app, and it's free to use, but if you'd like to upgrade to our full version, we've set up a special code for Heroic Investors listeners. So if you use the promo code HERO25 off, that's HERO25 OFF. So if you use that to kind of upgrade, you'll get 25% off. I hope you guys check it out.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you. I spent a very small amount of time checking it out, and I can certainly see the value. Is it more for 1 to 4 family, or does it work just as well on larger, small apartment buildings and that kind of thing, or is it more optimized for the smaller single family stuff?
Definitely for both. We have quite a lot of investors, and we have tools for both larger multifamily and commercial buildings, so you can enter a customized rent roll, unit by unit with square footage and beds, bath, and the rent. So you can build in a full composition of your apartment complex, and you'll get a breakdown of, all of your per unit costs, per unit expenses. So we definitely have both sides. I've met both investors, both residential and commercial, using our tool.
Very cool. Kind of back to your portfolio now. You've been buying mainly Fannie Mae, kind of conventional on the you said you were focusing on the single family and 1 to 4 families, and starting to look at maybe small apartments or something now at this point. But have you done more conventional lending so far with your properties?
So actually, when I was at the beginning of my kind of journey, me and my wife did use mostly conventional loans, as many as possible. We started with the VA loan, and then we kind of used the traditional 30-year fixed mortgages on first batch of single-family homes that we bought in San Diego, Atlanta, and Birmingham. I always recommend those programs because you'll get the best rates through those conventional mortgages. There's no hands down. So we try to maximize them as much as possible. Kind of more recently, we found out that we're basically can't qualify for them anymore. We have quite a few of those conventional loans, and because of the number and because of their kind of stringent debt to income requirements, we were having a hard time buying these fourplexes that we were looking at in Kansas City. So we actually switched to using commercial financing for the last few deals. We've set up an LLC for these properties in Missouri for these Kansas City properties, and I found a good lender who does very comparable programs. They're about 25-year amortization, 10-year term loans with pretty competitive interest rates. So definitely not as good as what we were getting with conventional financing, but again, just, we got to a point where we were not able to get that financing, and we switched to using commercial loans.
Cool, great. Well, that was very helpful. 2 questions. First, before I forget, Anton, and thanks again for the offer to the listeners, how can they contact you if they just want to reach out and ask you a question and network with you?
Sure, I'm very active on Bigger Pockets. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that website. So if you search for Anton Ivanov on Bigger Pockets, I think I'm the only one with that really Russian name. I love hearing from other investors and networking, so always happy to talk to you guys.
Perfect. And then one other question is just to kind of throw it to you. Is there anything about first responders, military members that transition that we haven't checked or haven't talked about that you think is essential to cover?
Yeah, I did want to name one thing. I talked to quite a few military members who are still in the military, and they ask me, hey, can I invest in real estate while I'm deployed, or can I invest in real estate while I'm still serving active duty? And I actually think that you absolutely can. And in fact, there's a few things that make military members, put them in a unique position to be fairly successful. One is that I already mentioned is the VA loan program. This is, I'm sure you guys are all familiar. It's a special program for military members and veterans to get, loans, 30-year fixed loans with a potentially 0% down payment. It's a fantastic program for active duty military or retired or veterans to, start their investment journey when they may not have that much saved up. So, you can buy a property with 0% down or close to that, have some maybe minimal closing costs, and then you have a house. And now that does come with a residency requirement, which means that, you need to live in one of the units for a while. But I've met plenty of folks who did similar thing that my wife and I did, which means they buy a multifamily, maybe a 2 to 4 unit, and live in one of the units, rent out the other, and then when they switch duty stations and maybe move somewhere else, now they have an investment property that can be fully rented. And you can even do the same with a single family home. Perhaps, you buy a house where your current duty station is, and
kind of leave a trail behind you. Yeah.
Almost, yeah, exactly. And by the time you get out of the, you finish your contract or you retire, you could have maybe even 10 plus properties easily that you kind of had in these various places. And in addition to your retirement check, you can have a nice, rental income coming in as well. And for those who are not in the military, there is a similar program called FHA. So if you don't have access to the VA loan, there is another program that offers kind of similar low down payment requirements.
I would just say on that one, just be careful about the FHA funding fee. Make sure you factor that into the cost, because it is substantial.
Yeah, it does come with additional fees, but if the numbers work out and you don't have quite a lot of funds saved up at the beginning, it could be a good way to get started.
A way to get your foot in the door. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one other thing that I really like about kind of the military is you do have essentially guaranteed income, so to speak. And I think that offers a great deal of security and kind of risk protection, because real estate is a risky endeavor. Things can happen to your house. You could have some longer vacancies, or, the roof leaks and needs to be replaced, so you can have sudden expenses. And while you're in the military, I think, you basically have a guaranteed paycheck coming in every few weeks, and that can give you a safety net in case something happens. So while, it's a little more volatile with civilian employment, you essentially can be let go at any time. With the military, it's much more secure, so you can kind of feel, a little safer and have that safety net of income coming in. So in case something does happen to your rental property, you'll have the money to take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely true. And that a lot of their comments there apply directly across to first responders as well. I mean, not everyone, but quite a few of us have, as government employees, have a little bit stronger, solid foundation. We have an income that is really appreciated by the lenders. They will turn and give you terms that they probably wouldn't provide somebody else. Anton, as we come to a close here, I really appreciate you spending so much time with us. It is very gracious of you, and for that offer for DealCheck. I think everyone should run out there and take a look at it, and certainly consider the 25% discount for listening to Heroic Investing. Everyone, if you've enjoyed the show, please give us a high rating. Anton, once again, thanks so much for coming and joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Gary. It was an honor.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.